Genesis 41. Sometime later, 2 full years, Pharaoh had a dream. He was standing on the bank of the Nile River when suddenly 7 sleek, fat cows came up out of the river and began grazing in the marsh grass. Then 7 other cows came up from the river, but these were scrawny and thin. They stood beside the fat cows on the riverbank. Then the scrawny cows ate the 7 sleek, fat cows. At that point, Pharaoh woke up. But he fell asleep again and had another dream. This time he saw 7 heads of grain, plump and beautiful, growing on a single stalk. Then 7 more heads of grain appeared, but these were shriveled and withered by the east wind. And these thin heads of grain swallowed up the 7 plump, well-formed heads. Then Pharaoh woke up again and realized it had been a dream. The next morning, Pharaoh was very disturbed. So he called for all the magicians and wise men of Egypt. He told them his dreams, but no one could interpret them. Finally, the chief cupbearer spoke up. "I remember my failure now. Some time ago, Pharaoh was angry with the chief baker and me, and he put us in prison in the palace of the captain of the guard. One night, the chief baker and I each had a dream, and each dream had its own meaning. There was a young Hebrew man there with us, a servant of the captain of the guard. When we told him our dreams, he interpreted them for us, telling each of us what our dreams meant. And everything happened just as he had predicted. I was restored to my position as cupbearer, and the chief baker was executed." Pharaoh immediately sent for Joseph, and he was quickly brought from the prison. After he had shaved and changed his clothes, he went in and stood before Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I had a dream last night, and no one here can tell me what it means. But I have heard that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it." Joseph replied, "It is beyond my power to do this, but God can tell you what it means." Therefore, Pharaoh should find the most discerning and wise person in the land, and put him in charge of managing the country. Then Pharaoh should appoint supervisors over the land, and let them collect 1/5 of all the crops during the 7 years of abundance. Have them gather all the food produced in the good years that are coming, and store the grain in the royal storehouses. Set it aside as food for the cities, so there will be food enough when the 7 years of famine come to Egypt. Otherwise, this famine will destroy the land." Joseph's suggestions seemed good to Pharaoh and his officials. Pharaoh said to his officials, "Show me another man as qualified as this, one so obviously filled with the Spirit of God." Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has revealed the meaning of your dreams to you, clearly you are the most discerning and wise person in the land. You will be in charge of my court, and all my people will take orders from you. Only I, sitting on my throne, will have more authority than you. I hereby put you in charge of the entire land of Egypt." Then Pharaoh removed his signet ring from his finger and placed it on Joseph's finger. He dressed him in fine linen clothing and placed a gold chain around his neck. Then he had Joseph ride in the chariot reserved for his second in command. and wherever he went, the command was shouted, "Kneel down." So Joseph was put in charge of all of Egypt. And Pharaoh said to him, "I am Pharaoh, but no one will lift a hand or foot in all of Egypt without your approval." Pharaoh then gave Joseph a new name, Zaphenath-Paneah. He also gave him a wife, Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, the priest of On. So Joseph took charge of the entire land of Egypt. Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. And when Joseph left Pharaoh's presence, he inspected the entire land. During the 7 years of abundance, the land produced phenomenal harvests. Joseph collected all the crops grown in Egypt during those 7 years and stored the grain in the cities. He piled up huge quantities of grain, like sand on the seashore. There was so much that he finally stopped keeping record because it was beyond measure. During this time, before the first year of famine, 2 sons were born to Joseph and his wife, Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, the priest of On. Joseph named his older son Manasseh, for he said, "God has made me forget all my troubles and all my father's family." He named his second son Ephraim, for he said, "God has made me fruitful in this land of my grief." At last, the 7 years of abundance came to an end. Then the 7 years of famine began, just as Joseph had predicted. The famine also struck all the surrounding countries, but throughout Egypt there was plenty of food. When the people of Egypt began to starve, they pleaded with Pharaoh for food. Pharaoh told them, "Go to Joseph and do whatever he tells you." So with famine everywhere, Joseph opened up the storehouses and distributed grain to the Egyptians. And the famine became severe throughout the land of Egypt. People from all around came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph, because the famine was severe in their lands too.